Azaan is a very interesting character. I've talked a lot about him on this channel. He has a very interesting set of abilities, a very interesting playstyle, and he's not an easy champion to get down unless you know his secret. He's actually Atlas in the past. Think about it. I mean, they practically look the same with the whole color scheme of the outfit. Coincidence? I think not. So in today's episode of How to Dominate As, I'll be giving up all my tips and tricks on how to dominate as Azaan. In this section, I'll be going over a very detailed ability breakdown. I highly recommend it as it's the second most needed tip here, so don't skip it. Just remember to pay special attention to the smaller details. I'll tell you when I start talking about them. Starting off with his primary fire, Judgment. You throw your hammer in an attack chain of medium, medium, heavy, dealing 525 damage on the medium hits and 630 on the heavy hits. Passive, taking and dealing damage increases your ire, which reduces the damage you take by up to 20% at 100% ire. While you are above 80% ire, you deal 12% increased damage. Using a basic ability above the ire threshold augments that ability. Using any basic ability consumes ire. And here are a couple of the smaller details, but still very, very important to mastering this character. He has a range limit of 450 units, the post-fire time between medium projectile is 1.1 seconds, and heavy projectile is 1.3 seconds. Generates 3% ultimate charge per hit, explodes in a 10 unit area of effect when above ire threshold. So that's the detailed breakdown of his primary fire. Now onto his first ability, Sanctuary. Create a series of 5 deployable wall segments in a semicircle, each with 2,500 health. Wow. This ability consumes 20 ire, cannot be cancelled. Ire threshold. Increase the health of each segment by 20%, total health 3,000. Now on to more of the detailed information. And remember, pay special attention to these as they might be smaller, but they are very necessary to get down. 5 walls will spawn in a 20 unit radius around the placement marker. The open side of the formed semicircle points to Azaan, has a deploy range of 80. The walls have 2,500 health and can be destroyed. Pushes enemies slightly when deployed underneath them. Anyone can stand on top of the walls and use it as a platform. Won't go into cooldown until the walls go down. Wall stays up for 8 seconds. And now on for Azaan's Conviction. Dash forward, carrying up to 1 enemy with you. You have to be in front of them to carry them. Slamming an enemy into a wall will deal damage and stun them. Hitting them into your own sanctuary walls deals additional damage and stuns for longer. This ability consumes 15% ire. Ire threshold. This ability is used faster. Now for the more specific details. Deals 150 damage on enemy contact and 350 by slamming an enemy into a wall. Cannot be affected by knockback for the duration and can be used to fly when looking up. And now for Reckoning. After a brief wind-up, send out a projectile that explodes into an area in front of you, dealing 300 damage and lifting enemies hit for 0.3 seconds. Ire threshold, reduce the cooldown of this ability. Will strike, and now for the smaller details. Will strike in an area of 50 by 30 units in front of you. The area consists of 2 rectangles starting with a small rectangle. The ire threshold reduces the cooldown by 3 seconds. Consumes 15% ire when used. And now for Deliverance, Azaan's ultimate. Rise into the air for up to 6 seconds, reducing the damage you take by 50%. Fire at the ground to throw your hammer, dealing 725 damage and applying knockback on a hit. Shortly after your hammer lands, teleport to it, dealing 150 additional damage and applying a large knockback in an area. And now for the small details. Activating this skill only consumes 70% of ultimate charge. Throwing the hammer consumes the remaining 30% of the ultimate charge. The landing area has a radius of 35 units. Has a post-fire time on the ultimate landing of 1.6 seconds. So now you have the detailed breakdown of Azaan's ability. And once again, I recommend going back and making sure you have those small details down, or at least you know about them. Like, you don't need to know that his primary heavy fire has a 1.3 second windup, but that it takes about a second to throw your heavy hammer. Now when it comes to combos, you have to remember he's just a tank, so don't expect some crazy like one-tap combo like I gave in my How to Dominate as Vatu video. You should check it out He's right. 1 second, he's a little shy. There we go. There he is. So just remember that this guy is a tank. He might be overpowered at the time of me speaking, but he's still a tank. Now this is my favorite combo here. It kills almost all the damage, healers, and flanks. Alright, so this ability is best used when it's just you against a single enemy. It can definitely work with another ally or two, but when there are more enemies, it gets a little more challenging, but not impossible. Basically, you shoot once at a single target. Use your walls around that single target to make sure they don't get away. Primary fire again, then use your movement ability, then shoot one more time. After this, you will have dealt 2,160 damage in about 4.5 seconds, and used 2 abilities not including his primary fire. That's pretty good, and if you remember, his movement ability charges in about 6 seconds, so it's a reliable source of movement, retreat, advance, all of it. So I really like the combo, and I recommend that you go try out your own combos, stuff like that, swap things out, because the wall is not needed in that combo, it really isn't. As for the routes this character will take, he's definitely best played as an off tank, but I bet you can pull off some kind of shield tank. Actually, now that I think about it, you can use your walls on the point, and by the time you kill the enemy team and they respawn and come back, the walls will already be ready again, so it's not hard to play him as a tank, but I just feel like his kit is best used for playing as an off tank. The routes you take should be similar to a regular tank's. You start off lurking near the point but not too far, and also not being stuck on the payload. So yeah, when it comes to routes, feel free to give a couple different playstyles a try. Now this is something that everybody, no matter the class, rank, champion, or anything, should be doing. I will admit it's much more important for the flanks. It's studying the enemy team. I like to look at the enemy team on the loading screen and devise a plan. I'll look at the champions and the skill levels that they are. The higher an enemy's level is, the more you should expect them to know all the tips and tricks of that champion. The lower they are, the more you should expect them to not know what they're doing in a way. Granted, every dredge, no matter the level, should know how to hold down right click for a quarter hour, but just expect that a level 3 Xin probably won't know that his third swing is a heavy attack that deals more damage. So the loading screen might be long and boring, but it's vital. Also, looking at the champions the enemies play as is important, but not as important as looking at their talents. By far the most crucial part of studying the enemy team and coming up with a plan is looking at the enemy's talents. For instance, if you're a flank and you've set your eyes on an enemy Tyra and you don't check to see if she has the burn monster talent, then you might be caught in a very bad situation if you get in her fire. So always check. Maps play a big role in how you play. Even some of the best shield tanks with the best shields struggle on Timber Mill. The point is so exposed and right there in the open that it's hard to be someone standing on it. Here's a good example of a pretty decent route you should take for Azaan on Stone Keep. Just remember that this is a generic casual playstyle I'm depicting here, but this area right here is something you should check out. A lot of damage like to go and camp up here, and a lot of flanks sometimes use this as a flank route, but your presence should be enough to make them leave. I mean, who wouldn't run when you've got a 7-2 Pyre God floating to you talking about judgment? If you run into anybody who doesn't want to leave, well, I just showed you the Instakill Combo, so they should be dead real quick. It's also a good vantage point, so when you clear it, you can just still see everybody else fighting from up there, so it's a pretty good place to be lurking. The items you should get with Azaan. This is a very important part of the guide, but also one that's flexible. It's really up to you. Maybe you have trouble with aim, so defaulting and maxing out cauterize might not be the best for you. I know I'm going against what a lot of people would say, but if you can't hit anything, try something other than a very expensive item that all depends on you hitting something. Haven is one I recommend for pretty much all Azaan playstyles. Cauterize if you can hit something, and some kind of heal is nice, though after a couple patches ago, all the heals are pretty much useless. And remember, And always remember, this is a very underrated item, resilience. If they have CC, use resilience, you're a tank. So Azaan's ultimate. I went very deep into Vatu's ultimate and I was able to give some really good tips and tricks, but Azaan's is a little more simple. I recommend using it on groups of enemies and maybe a payload or something like that, because it does a lot of damage and you only need like a couple of shots to kill once you use this ultimate on an enemy. Another trick is once you use the ultimate, you're probably going to chase and finish off the low health enemies. And when you do this, you're going to lose some health. So what you want is the most health you can have right before you give chase. Take this. If you use the ultimate, you rise into the air, then you can float around for a bit for 6 seconds, but you're slow. All the while you can choose where you want to throw the hammer, and then slam into the ground and deal another bunch of damage. So use the ultimate near some cover, and I don't mean like near a box where you have cover at the moment. I mean when you rise up, you'll still have some cover. Then you can peek the edge and pick your desired location to kill. So, key takeaways. Get the small details of the abilities down. You don't need the specific numbers, just know that they're there. Remember some combos, whether the ones I pointed out or some that you've come up with. The routes you take depend on the map and the enemy team. Always remember that there are some maps where Azaan might not be the best, but you can find a way. I know you can. Always, no matter the class, champion, anything, always look at the enemy team, mastery levels, items, and most important, talents. When it comes to items, I recommend Haven, but it's a simple one that pretty much all tanks should have. But I leave that one open for you. And tips of the ultimate. It's not necessary at all, but I recommend using some cover when you rise into the air. You'll save yourself a couple Strix, headshots, and Ying beams along the way. And with that, I've given all the tips and tricks I know. I expect you to go out there and dominate. Please feel free, absolutely free, to give your thoughts, disagreements, your own tips and tricks, all of it. I'll be responding to most of the comments. And feel free to come back to the video and show how things worked for you. I hope you have a great day, and remember, life is short. Play great games.